Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Glacé Film Club podcast, and a very, very special one we have today. Of course, I'm here. I'm going to take you through a film. I'm going to dive into it. But it's not just me, and it hasn't been just me for 99 episodes. Been joined by my good friend, and he's here again today because you know what? We're going into our 100th episode. This is very exciting. We're here. We're in the Beacon pub in Altrincham. We're going to have some pints. We're going to talk about a film. But before we get into that, I want to introduce the man of movies, the man with thoughts in his mind that go from place to place and take you with him as he explores culture and life and everything in between. It is, of course, for the 100th time, Callum. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon.
I'm
well. I'm well. That was a long intro.
I wanted to give you an extra special intro for this 100th review episode.
Thank you very much.
Because it's been a long journey. Who would have thought we'd get to 100 review episodes of the podcast? Yet, here we are. How is it making you feel?
It's weird, isn't it? Because what started out as a small thing to do in a igloo studio in Chester.
The igloo studio.
Has turned into something quite cool, I think.
I think it has.
Yeah.
I think cool's the word. It was physically cool when we started.
Well,
in the igloo studio, in a small spare room in a house in Chester, no central heating that worked in that room. So it felt like the perfect place to sit with a lot of coats on and talk about film. But it was the warmth of conversation that heated us up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thought of just the fact that I could wear a scarf indoors.
Yeah.
Just look more interesting than what those early episodes probably were. I don't know.
You're always finding another way to look the part.
And
as you always do. But I think over the course of this episode, Callum, I wanted to reflect 100 episodes where we look back.
It's always good to reflect.
Because we've gone through a lot of films. We've gone through a lot of conversation. Because we've always made that point. Of course, we've wanted to talk about the film. But for us, it's been bigger than the film, what the film represents, what it's trying to get us talking about. Because, of course, there's filmmaking techniques, there's cinematography, and we always go on to that. But it's the conversation. That's what we represent here at the Glacé Film Club podcast. And the fact that we're here for the 100th episode is why we wanted to have a special one. So before we get into it, we'll have a film today. We're going to review a film. Of course we are. But before we tease that, we're here at the Beacon pub in Altrincham. A big thanks to everyone here at the Beacon. Will, especially, who runs the bar here, for welcoming us in. This extraordinary setting that we're in here just feels right to have.
I know, it's quite nice, isn't it? In the sense that a lovely window.
We've got windows. We've got
looking
this
over
nice pub green colour. We've got our table/stool here, which has got 2 pints sat on it, ready to be consumed. And I think let's get into that when we have our favourite shared drink of Guinness. So
cheers.
Here's to 100. Cheers. I'm looking forward to
episodes.
diving into this 100th review.
Should we slurp it?
Yeah, we'll get a little bit of audio for that.
Yeah. I thought you were going to split the G then.
Well,
that seems to be the zeitgeist of the
my
film,
instinct went with intent, but I realised that we've got a full episode ahead and I want to keep a little bit of moisture and lubrication in there ready for the conversation.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Guinness is often the lubricator of great conversation.
It democratises conversation.
Exactly. Well, as you'll know, through all of the review episodes we've done, we pick one film, we dive into it, we unpick it, we give our thoughts, our feelings, go through the big themes involved. But because this is a special episode, we didn't want to pick any old film.
We did not, no.
Go in on it thinking, is it going to be great? Is it going to be rubbish? We didn't want to have to slate a film on our 100th episode. So we've picked a joint favourite, an epic, one that tickles upon our top films of all time collectively, and we wanted to dive into it and tell you what we love about it. We're not going to be really going hard on some big criticality. We're going to say what's great about this film, because it is a great film. So before we do that, Callum, once again, can we have one of your classic, beautiful overviews of this film and tell us what we're going to be chatting about today?
I feel like this, before I start this microphone, I'm going to be spinning it around quite a lot just because it's quite a good pointer.
So if you wonder why the audio quality is horrendous on this one, it's because Callum can't handle the microphone.
Indeed.
But before we get into the film, before we start giving our thoughts and feelings on it, Callum, please can you give us one of your classic, your beautiful, your wonderful overviews of the film we're going to be chatting about today?
Predictably, we watched High Fidelity.
Yeah, we did.
Now, anyone that knows me in particular will know that at any given moment I will say, you need to watch High Fidelity. Mm-hmm. I'll hold it up in front of them like a severed head and said, you need to watch this. You must watch this film. It is the greatest movie ever created. And to be fair, that's good pedigree for saying that it is. It's an absolute cult classic. Directed by...
Believe in it that much?
Well, the thing is, I watched it when I was doing my Masters, because I've done a Masters. Don't know if you know.
Get that dropped in there.
I don't ever want to tell everybody. So as the rest of the population. Anyway, I digress. So I watched it when I was doing that, and I just thought it just struck a particular chord with me at that particular point in my life. It's so quotable as well. But anyway, it's directed by Stephen Frears, based on a novel by Nick Hornby. The novel is actually set in London, but the film is set at a vinyl store in Chicago. I think that's another reason why I like it, because it's set in Chicago. And Chicago
okay. There's an extra exoticism to the city it's based in. Pretty
awesome. I did my master's degree on the history of Chicago. I mean, it's a film made for me, really. But yeah, directed by Stephen Frears, stars John Cusack and Jack Black. And it's basically about a guy sort of whittering on about his top 5 relationships. He's just gone through a breakup with his current girlfriend, and then basically goes through him talking about his top 5 breakups. And he owns a record shop, and it's basically it could be a sitcom, but it's just a film. It's got a sitcom.
It could be a sitcom, like just set in that record store.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did actually make a series of it on Disney Plus.
Tell me more.
They made a series.
When was that?
A few years ago. It was actually Zoe Kravitz in it.
Right. Okay.
Who plays Rob Gordon?
Okay, we're the old switcheroo.
Yeah. Very similar scripts. It didn't really gel with me just because I have so much love for the original. But
it's hard when you're going which is a cult classic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It's got a very specific fandom.
Exactly. I think the reason why the film is so good is because it focuses on the everyday. Over intellectualize High Fidelity, but there is an element of the fact that it just focuses on everyday emotions that everyone at some point will feel. So a running sort of joke in it is that, what are your top 5 records? Mm-hmm. It's a love letter to music, obviously, but also it's sort of just a love letter to relationships and what they look like, and what they look like in different parts of your life as well. So like the whole point of the top 5 is that it's the top 5 relationships that have had a profound impact on his life, basically, for better or for worse. And I think, when you look back on your life, I think the grand old age of 30.
The grand old age.
I think it's, everyone gets to a certain... I'm not saying I'm doing this now, but everyone will get to a certain point in their life when they look back and think, oh, that relationship had an impact on my life in this way. That person, not necessarily the relationship itself, but just the person had a huge impact on my life. And like juxtaposed with the love of music as well, you could say the same thing about records. That record was so influential for me. That record had such a huge impact on me. I made inroads. It was like, one of my favorite bands is Green Day, and, listening to Green Day has allowed me to make inroads to other punk music. I listened to them, and I was like, okay, so who's influenced that? Let's see what happens with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what...
Which is exactly what they do in the film.
Well, exactly.
Was the stiff little fingers?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is another reason why the film's so funny as well, because the first time I watched it, it's like all these different things. It's like, that's me.
Yeah, so you saw a lot of yourself in it.
Yeah, it's like, a lot of people think, Green Day are influenced by 2 bands. And then, the woman in the shop goes, The Clash. And then the guy goes, yes, correct.
But the film aims to appeal to the character that is in the film, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And And then, of course, he plays Stiff Little Fingers, and it's like, yeah, it's great. And then someone in the shop turns around and goes, "Is this the new Green Day?"
Yeah.
It's really funny. I love, obviously, Bruce Springsteen's in it as well.
Yes, makes a lovely cameo.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he's ripped to bits in it.
Originally, I mean, he's the boss, isn't he? Like,
He is the boss.
I mean, to be fair, you know who they originally wanted to get for that?
Go on.
They wanted Bob Dylan
Right.
originally, but they couldn't get him.
He's not quite got the charisma.
No, indeed.
I don't think he would really like embrace the camera as much as Bruce Springsteen did.
Well, no, because what did he famously? He famously said, as if it's trending on social media.
Yeah, go on.
He didn't. He said about Timothée Chalamet about him playing Bob Dylan in this new biopic that they're making. He said, "I'll get a camera and put a wig on and dress up as him and see how he likes it."
Right. So he's not behind this new release.
Indeed, yeah. Plus, he doesn't play the guitar anymore and hasn't done for the past 20 years.
Okay.
So I think... Oh, this movie was made, it was 2000, I think. So maybe...
High Fidelity?
Yeah.
I think so.
So had he stopped playing the guitar by that point? I think he had. So it wouldn't have worked. It would have been him on the piano.
Right.
You know, being indecipherable.
Yeah.
Just going... This is brilliant.
Yeah, he would, because Springsteen embodies his own character, doesn't
Exactly.
he? He's happy to be Bruce Springsteen.
Well, he's like, you know, he says, just give that old salute to your top five and just move on down the road.
Yeah.
And it's like that sounds like a Springsteen lyric.
Definitely.
You know, so the first time I watched it, there was lots of references in there that sort of struck a chord with me, and exactly, and it was just quite. It just really made me laugh. And then I read the novel. The novel's really different from the film, to be fair.
In what way?
Well,
Apart from the London-Chicago element.
I don't know whether this is the power of film, but I liked Rob Gordon more in the film than I did in the book, even though they're essentially the same character, and quite frankly, he is a knob. But
a lovable knob.
But you do like him, indeed, yeah.
There's something to be said for the lovable knob.
There is, I suppose, yeah. But you do end up thinking like you want to be him, not necessarily from a morality perspective.
No, because he romanticizes the angst.
Exactly. He romanticizes everything about his life, and it's just one of those movies that the soundtrack kicks fucking ass. That's a quote from the film.
There you go. A quote from the film which describes the film.
There you go. Well, there's that scene, isn't there, when it's like, what would you say if you hadn't seen Evil Dead 2 yet? It's like, would you get the impression you really want to see that movie? So would you? Well, no, because you would have already gone to see it.
Yeah.
But the word "yet" implies, yeah. You know what? If I really wanted to see that movie, I would have seen it, but then I'm going to eventually see it. And of course, they're talking about sex.
Yeah.
And it's just quite funny.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a classic, well, not a classic, but it's just such a bloke conversation.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to talk about the concept of sex. I'm going to talk about sex, but I'm going to use Evil Dead 2 as my reference
Yeah, I'm not going to address anything head on.
Exactly, yeah. But it just like highlights just how pathetic is a strong word to describe the trio in the shop, but there is an element of like just sort of, oh, this is just ridiculous because they're playing into a stereotype about like three loners who own a record shop, basically.
Yes. But there's something beautiful about that.
But there's something beautiful about it.
From it is that it is, as I said before, it's an angsty film, but it's like, it's a grown-up teenage angst film. Yeah, because
that's so true. Yeah,
he's
so true.
playing all these things as like he's looking back and being like whimpering over these failed relationships and like beating himself up. And there's all the tropes of romantic films of the rain and the lay in bed, tossing and turning, and the obsessive phone calls and stuff like that, which you would have in like teen angst films or rom-com. And this is a rom-com. It is a rom-com, but it's just not like a chick flicky rom-com. It's more of an indie rom-com in many ways, in the kind of ways it goes. But I think that's an element of it. It's got that teenage angst to it, but it's about a guy who's, late 20s, early 30s, are they in it? Is that? Yeah. So it's a grown-up version of that. And I think that's why it then connects through as well, because as we've discussed in a lot of the reviews we've done, is that coming of age films are classically teenage films, but the genre of coming of age, the idea of coming of age, can apply for all periods of life, all walks of life. And this actually goes, all right, it's not people in the 70s, but it's not teenagers. It's like grown adults, but looking at their relationships in this like teen angsty way. And I think that's why it's appealing, because we all still want to. When you have those emotions in that, you still want to look back and like, you know, cry in a corner and like be like, why me, and all stuff like that. And he's like in his 30s. Doing it, romanticising that.
Well, there's an adolescent maturity to it.
Yeah, there is, and with the record element and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, but there's moments in the film that I think are just really emphasise that theme. Like, there's the scene when he's arranging his record collection.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just like
It's
takes
great.
so much time to rearrange his record collection. It's like, Rob, where have you been? It's like, I've been busy. It's like, what do you mean you've been busy? It's like, I've been rearranging my record collection. And he's like, alphabetical? No, not alphabetical. Not genre. No, not genre. And he goes, this autobiographical. And he's like, no fucking way.
Loses his mind.
It's like, oh my God, you're doing an autobiographical organization of your record collection. And then it's like I have to remember that I bought Fleetwood Mac. Is it Tusk or Rumours? I can't remember. It's like I have to remember that I bought this Fleetwood Mac record in the fall of 1987 pile, but didn't, for a person I was deeply in love with, but then didn't give it to her for personal reasons. And it's just like, it's just so funny.
Yeah, but there's
It's
something
so
quite
funny.
deeply satisfying about that you can get, and that like they find it a bit nerdily satisfying. But it's just that thing of like almost indulging your own passions and interests and like making them as if it is a thing or a bigger thing, which we do in our lives.
Well, on the DVD.
Hey,
that old piece of software.
we're going back.
We're going back a fair few years now. I bought it from CEX in 2016, I think.
Famous second-hand trading store.
Yeah. And it was 50 pence.
Good deal.
Very good deal. And I
I
remember...
first got the copy of it on DVD, actually.
Well, I remember I watched it on a computer desktop.
Sat there like that, the mouse in hand.
Yeah, in an office in Lancaster University.
Did you actually?
I did, yeah. I got a load of... do you remember there was a spa at Lancaster University that used to do 50p cans?
What cans we talking?
It was all horrific.
Loose cans. Yeah.
Strongbow and Carling.
Okay.
Horrific. Like 50p, dented, falling off the wagon.
Sure. But still got the liquid in them.
Got a big bag of cans and watched High Fidelity on a computer desktop. So there was, I think that it was a coming of age film.
It was a real coming of age.
A moment was like, oh, this is what it's like to live off 20 quid a week. So that was the first sort of moment I watched High Fidelity. I can't remember what the original point of this was. Adolescent maturity.
Yeah, well, I was just saying how I thought that this is it's a teenage angsty film, but grown-up version of it.
I was going to say something else. It was so blooming.
But where I want to
profound
take
as
this as well is like, I don't think you can talk about High Fidelity without talking about Jack Black in it. Because he is,
very good.
So Jack Black in it, in his old scooby-dooby phase,
Absolutely,
giving it all that. He's playing a caricature of Jack Black. This is peak. And he's fantastic in it. It suits him down to the ground because obviously it is at its core a music film as well. There's so many musical references. It's set in a record shop, all of that. But I think his humour carries it through because you've got the main character is this dark, angsty, bit depressive kind of guy. And as you said, he's a knob, but you can't help but warm to him because there's something about him that you can connect to. But I think the comedy relief of Jack Black against that both actually makes that, a bit more stark, but then takes you through and makes it enjoyable.
Well, I remember what I was going to say now, and it is related to that.
Hit me.
On the special features of
the special features on your 50p
on
DVD.
the DVD. There's a extended, deleted scenes section.
Right,
I missed that, Just as a side note, I missed that. Like the deleted scenes.
Where have they all gone?
Well, exactly. Yeah, everything is on streaming now.
But did they die with the DVD?
I don't know.
There's the question.
But I miss, spending. I mean, admittedly, it was 50 pence, but I remember when the DVD first came out, it was like 15, 20 pounds for the film. And like,
now you weren't nostalgic.
Yeah, you weren't the Morrison's DVD aisle. So you get those like film box
Morrison specifically.
Because it was right next to me mum's.
Okay, fair enough. I should have said it as if it was such a universality.
No, it was right next to the house that I grew up in Blackpool. And on a Friday or a Saturday, I mean, was it Friday, Saturday? It was usually midweek. So I actually used to go and do the big shop. And like absolutely hated it as a kid. And then I always used to get like a DVD from the Morrisons. I used to stand in the Morrison's DVD aisle whilst my mum did the rest of the shopping with my brother. Well, no, he stood with me. We look at the DVDs, look at the games.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was the film boxes, and it was like, an extra 1 hour of special features. And it's like, oh, you're not just paying for the film, you're paying for the, the behind the scenes access, basically.
Are there any standout DVDs from that era of your Morrisons? Just on a slight aside, I'm picturing you stood there, young Callum, looking at all the top charts there.
Well, the problem was, I think most young boys at some point have a crisis of masculinity.
I don't like where this is going.
I think most men are having a crisis of masculinity.
Separate content. That can be the DVD
I'm leading into this because there was a film, like with 3 films in a box set. And it was,
I can picture the type,
and it was marketed as, dad's movies or
wrapped
whatever.
in plastic.
Yeah, dad's movies. So I got a 3-film box set. Bad Boys, the first one. Striking Distance, which was a sort of semi-indie film that Bruce Willis and Sarah Jessica Parker did. He's was a detective, and now he's working as river police, and he's trying to find this serial killer or whatever.
Yeah.
And SWAT, the film with Colin Farrell and Samuel L. Jackson in. It was marketed as the Dad Man Box.
Okay.
I was like basically just loads
for Father's Day.
Exactly. So it's just like as a 9-year-old.
Yeah. That really set you up.
That's what I mean.
Christmas.
That's what I mean. Exactly. So that's a standout one. Anyway, I digress. The original point of this was the special features on the high fidelity.
Of course. Yeah, come on, let's get through this.
Anyway, there's a deleted scene when, when he's sat in the record shop and he's just found out that Laura's seeing somebody else.
Yeah.
And someone comes in and is like, do you have soul? And he's like, well, that all depends.
Yeah.
But he's on the phone and it's like, yeah, I'm interested. You never really know what the phone call's about. It's about a woman who has called him up selling her ex-husband's husband's record collection.
Right.
Because she's found out that he's been cheating on her. So then she decides to bring him up and says, you can have it all for $10. And there's like first pressings of the Rolling Stones, like first pressings of the Beatles. It's like a really like rare record collection basically. It's like, no, you can have it all. And he's like, what? No. And he's like basically like a kid. And then there's this moment where she stood there and it's like, yes, you're all the same. You just throw a little bit of sweets, a little bit of, it's like sort of like very animalistic. And it's, again, very funny. Very, very funny. Just like, obviously let him go and play in the sandpit with his records.
Yeah.
So there's that scene. But then there's also the reasons why they cast who they did. So when you were saying Jack Black is really Jack Black in it, they weren't sure if they were going to get him.
What point in his career is this for Jack Black?
It's quite early on. He hadn't really done that much stuff because it's pre-School of Rock.
What's that, like 2004?
Yeah, 2004. So it's pre-School of Rock. He'd done a couple of movies. He'd done The Jackal with Bruce Willis.
Okay.
Shows my extensive film knowledge.
See, this is why you're the encyclopedia. I'm just prodding with the stick.
He'd done not Striking Distance. Sorry, he'd done that. I'm not sure what else he'd done. I think he was doing some stuff with in Second City, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
But it's still relatively early in the Jack Black career.
Yeah, absolutely. But they were wondering, because the film is so different from the book in terms of characterization of everyone beyond Rob Gordon, pretty much. Or is it though? I don't know. It's pretty honest, actually. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't read it in about 15 years. So, yeah, 15 years. That's a lie. I was 15 years old. 10 years, maybe. Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Good.
That's
Okay.
better.
Okay. Yeah, we've cleared that up.
But yeah, no, so it talks about why they were cast and who they wanted to get and the process behind it. The special, the extended features add another layer to the film, I think. Mm-hmm. Does it add another layer? Or does it just? It's an extension of what already exists, really. Yeah, anyway,
Good.
I'm rambling.
The
Good
point
fun,
there
good
being,
fun. Yeah,
find your extras and give them a watch.
exactly.
But what I wanted to then also put to you is that it is I said it's a bit of a kind of indie rom-com in many ways, and it's nothing necessarily groundbreaking in the way that where the plot goes.
Does it have to be?
Well, this is what I want to ask.
Sorry, I interrupted.
This is what I want to ask.
Yeah.
But it's got a novel premise in it that this idea of top fives runs all the way through it. So the whole film's bound together by him opening up, looking over his top 5 breakups.
Yes.
But then top fives is a thing for him and his colleagues in the record store, and then he starts top 5 records. So that's the premise. That's like a bit of a novel premise holding it together. So, which is interesting, amusing, entertaining all the way through. But apart from that, it is a bit of an angsty kind of rom-com, bit of indiness, cult type scenario to it. I like the idea that it is grown-up teen angst. But apart from that, it's just a really great watch. And I've been trying to put my finger on exactly why it's so entertaining and captivating, because I rewatched it, of course, before we did this, and knew I enjoyed it. And I watched the first half hour and I'm like, yeah, of course, this is good. What is it about it that really grabs me? And then at the end of the film, I'm like, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. Yeah. So is there something bigger? Is there something deeper? Or is it just good entertainment?
I think it's got a lot to do with the internet. And I know this is kind of like, this is the hill I'm going to die on at the moment.
Okay, go for it.
The internet is an alien life form that will be the death of us all. But I think it captures a moment just before the internet becomes a phenomenon, just before computers, and it's pre-smartphone. But I think it captures a moment in time when things probably were a little bit more innocent, maybe. Mm-hmm. Things meant a bit more, I think, in terms of passion.
Yeah.
So the whole thing that drives the film is passion about music, passion about
there's a real genuineness.
Records. I mean, even the little skate dudes who try and nick the records when he's like, they nick a load of sort of random records. He's like, what, you're slamming to Joni Mitchell now? And it's like, you're so bigoted. You think you know what we listen to. Things meant a little bit more. In terms of like passions about music, to be able to go to a record store, buy a physical copy of a record, have a conversation about the record, and it clearly means something to everyone in the movie. And I think maybe that's what Nick Hornby was trying to drive at when he actually wrote the book, maybe. This idea that it's a particular moment in time when things just seem to matter more. The idea that you can actually have a conversation with somebody about something important without looking at your phone halfway through a conversation. I think it was just quite important. I think that's why. Sorry, it's quite important that you have a conversation with someone without looking at your phone halfway through it. I'm being quite cynical there because not everybody does that. But I don't know. It just seems to be at the moment. It's a nice sort of comfort blanket. Maybe. I
agree with, but this is of course the modern lens, isn't it? Like I've seen this.
Of course it is. Yeah, of course it is.
Pre-phone times, but I think the point is still there.
But even though it's written pre-phone times, I think that could something like that be written now? I'm not convinced.
Well, no, I think the point absolutely still stands. It's maybe just become more pertinent. But the point being that it's harking back to a slightly more physical age, and where you put a bit of meaning into something. And even though, in the end, none of it really matters, what they're talking about or what they've got. Like it's it's just a bunch of records. They're talking about films, getting a bit obsessed with these singers and stuff like that. But it is stuff that matters to us, and it's what adds to life. And the point being is that there's an actual conversation and people are passionate, interested about it and have a deep connection to it rather than just a transient passing connection to a lot of things that don't really grab them. Like there's something there.
Well, on that, I mean, there's the scene when Laura's dad dies.
Yeah.
And he goes,
both
top 5
tragedy and comedy.
Exactly. And he goes like top 5 records about death. And then like they're sort of bickering over, what records would you have about death?
Yeah.
Laura's dad tribute. And then it's like, the night Laura's daddy died. And then it's like, it's really funny. But then there's
some good dark comedy in that.
Absolutely. But then there's the other scene as well when they're talking about top 5. I'm feeling pretty grey today. Top five track ones, side ones, track ones.
Yeah.
And it's like Massive Attack. Oh, that's not predictable at all. What about Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? And it's slightly a new record. You know what I mean? It's like, what does he say? He goes, a load of classics with a slightly new record slipped in at the end. Very pussy.
But that's the levity that Jack Black brings to it.
No, indeed, exactly. But it's like, again, to have that conversation to that degree about something that nobody buys anymore,
which
is quite fun.
Of course, that exists, but I think that the point that there's a certain physicality to that maybe in times gone by we would have thrown more commitment, dedication, thought into something like that rather than something that's passing. And even though at the end it is relatively meaningless, but the point is finding meaning in the meaningless things in life. Isn't there we go? We've got the philosophy out of it.
Yeah.
We've got the philosophy out of the film. It's finding the meaning in the meaningless things in life.
I started when I was after I'd finished my master's degree, I was unemployed for a bit. And I was doing that sort of thing. I was just like, everything I wrote was absolutely groundbreakingly wonderful. And actually,
no one's ever thought this before.
Looking back, it was just absolutely pretentious, just wank.
But great pretentious wank.
But yeah, indeed. But I remember I was like, I set up remember WordPress?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I set up like a thing. It was just like, wrote a few, like a couple of blog posts about, life or whatever. Just really, really tragic looking back.
We need to get those shared out.
I deleted it. No, I deleted it. It's awful.
You put them on your letterbox.
Should do, yeah. Well, I don't know how to actually share that out. So my letterboxd account, if anyone's listening or watching. What do you mean if anyone's listening? Loads of people listen to this. By
the time this episode is released, you would have figured out how to share your letterboxd account details.
But the header of the website was, "Do you have soul?" Well, that depends.
Nice.
And then just and then I had a Ryan Adams quote on it. It was like, "Where this is where you meet my mind."
Were you part of that? Part of connecting to something?
Well, speaking of being a part and connecting to something, in the film, he produces a single, doesn't he? By "I Sold Your Mum's Wheelchair."
Yeah.
The band, the Skate Dudes.
What a great name.
"I sold my mum's wheelchair." But there's a moment when it's like, it can't be put out. The single can't be done in time. And Barry's opening. Barry, what the... Sorry, anyone listening and actually watching the actual recorded version of this will just be thinking, why is he making weird noises?
This is the joy of the video, Callum.
These are the joys of video. And she goes, and his girlfriend Laura goes, "Well, isn't this what you've always wanted? You're the world's most important number one critic," which I think is quite funny.
Yes.
And then and then she goes, "As soon as you've produced something and sold a record, regardless of how big it gets, you're officially a part of creating art. Mm-hmm. You're officially a part of it." So there's moments of like silly comedy, but then there's moments of tragedy, but then there's moments of actually something a little bit more profound.
Which I think it does have, the film, and I think the profoundness of it is how it rounds itself off. So there's two elements of this. his relationship, which holds it all together in the top 5 breakups, and the fact that he goes and revisits those old girlfriends, but then it basically summarizes him saying that I always want to go from person to person or to idea in life or what I'm going to do, but no, like to commit to something, there's a beauty in that. And he basically says to his girlfriend, like, I've had notion to leave or I want to go and do this stuff, but I've always done that, like I want to commit to it. And the film basically rounds off and saying, like, you know, life and things aren't perfect, but the joy is in actually pursuing something, whether that be a relationship or whether it be a life goal, and actually going after it. So there's something to do with that where it gets the profoundness in it, and I think that's both represented by his relationship in it by the end, but then also him putting the record out and actually allowing himself not to be the person who just sneers, but actually take the risk. And there's which is, you know, that's a big thing, isn't it? It's like you can sneer all your life, but if you put yourself in that position, you'll be the person who has to feel the negative effects of that and put up with it.
I mean, he does make this point by saying that he makes the point by comparing it to his girlfriend's underwear.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny.
Yeah. As are many of the moments in good comedy. But just to round off the fact that it is profound to that bit, and I think that's where the grown-up element of the teen angst film comes into it. It's like, hey, still have your teen angst. We've all got it. It runs through life. But the grown-up element there's like, oh, there's a bit more of a rounded, profound element. And I think that's why it's good. And that's why I think the question I asked before, is it just a bit of entertainment and it's just good entertainment, or is there more that grabs us in? I think subtly, through the back door without us realising it, it actually gives us something a bit philosophical and profound, whereas actually it's masked as a bit of an angsty indie rom-com with some funny, quirky elements to it. But I think it's just a very well-written film, and it's got all of that.
I also think the fact that when it was made, it was a bit of an indie film as well, and it's become a cult classic, I think helps the sort of the longevity of it.
Yeah.
You know, the set in particular is quite cool. It's not exactly an ambitious set. It's just a record store, but it works for the context of the points it's trying to make. I'm also incredibly jealous of his apartment as well. He repeatedly says...
This is the thing with films, isn't it? And TV series. They have unbelievable apartments, but no money.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, just, you know, look at this place. It's a dump. You know, I've got no money. It's massive. In the centre of Chicago, in like a lovely brownstone apartment building. Also, I feel as though we have to talk about Tim Robbins.
Talk away.
It's hilarious. Ian, Raymond, Ray.
Yeah.
Ian, Ray.
It gets a bit... It's slightly bizarre, that scenario.
That's why
it's got a bit of
it's
absurdity to it.
That's why I think, yeah, no, indeed. I was going to talk about this actually. There's an element of surrealism,
definitely,
with that dynamic. It's very, very funny.
Which is very of that time.
Well, indeed, because he goes, she has no friends called Ian. And then he goes, it's like, oh, I remember him now. Just rings on his fingers, awful cooking smells. He's really into his world music, Latin beats, whatever was trending, popular that week. And it's like that's his default insult to insult his music taste.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just very, very good. Just like, that's his default insult. Although I think there are moments in the film where, when he's revisiting his ex-girlfriends, there is an element of, God, you're an arse.
Yeah.
Like, you really are.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bit when, you know, he finds out that Laura, his ex-girlfriend, hasn't slept with her new boyfriend.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he goes, it's like, I feel so good. And I immediately go out and sleep with somebody else.
He's so self-involved, isn't he?
Oh, he's so self-involved in his own hubris. There you go. I think I get hubris in there at some point. Yeah, there we go. He's so self-involved with his own hubris. But then you still can't help but not like his character. I don't understand.
But I think that's how well the film's put together, because it still draws you into that.
Yes. Oh, but the other thing I was going to mention about Tim Robbins, just before we carry on,
Robbins.
is I say Tim Robbins. It definitely is Tim Robbins.
We've said Tim Robbins too many times now for it not to be him.
If it isn't, it's the guy that plays the main character in The Shawshank Redemption. I think that's Tim Robbins. We're going to go with that.
Okay.
And if we're wrong,
We'll put a correctional note.
Well, if we're wrong, I've got the reference there.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, just Google the main guy from the Shawshank Redemption.
Him.
There's that scene when they play out what they're going to do to him when he comes in. It's
That's
like,
good.
conflict resolution is my specialty. And he comes in and says, maybe I would respect those wishes. And he just like does all these 3 clips of like what he would have done.
Yeah.
Very
Again,
funny.
brief elements of surrealism.
Oh, exactly.
And then another scene I really like is when they have the single launch. I think that's fantastic because it brings it all together, even though it's really normal and true and quite just lovely because they're back together and it's all nice. And then the band gets up and he thinks they're going to be awful. And then Jack Black's like singing Marvin Gaye and nails it. And it's great. Yeah. It's just a wholesomeness to it. And I think that there's a bit of a maturity to that element. And it's quite nice. It's just nice to see.
I think, indeed, I think, I agree with that in the sense that because the whole movie's been characterized by, I mean, let's face it, pretty, adolescence sort of quarreling. But of course, when you're going through a breakup, it is quite adolescent in some respects. You're grown adults bickering.
And there's a point of the film, I think it's going to say, like, look, you can be grown up, but...
admittedly, there is... one thing that I think is quite sobering, though, is that... Because at first, I think you want to lean more towards his side.
Yeah.
Because, she's ended it. And he's miserable. And it's why have you ended it? Look how miserable you're making him. But then I think what it does quite cleverly is that it flips it and says, okay, because let's stop having sympathy for him because when he's in the bar, and even when he's in the bar and he's confessing what he's done, there's still an element of hubris there because he goes, oh, years ago I was a DJ at a club. I was good at it.
Yeah, there is. There is. Those bits to camera as well. I love that. Breaking the fourth wall there. I'm all about that. Any opportunity.
Absolutely.
So it's good. Again, we chat about what is it that makes it. There's just so many elements that adds up to make it fantastic.
Well, there's that bit when he's talking about, I borrowed a lot of money and then didn't give any of it back, and then I cheated on her while she was pregnant, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're a bit of an ass.
Yes.
Well, you're not a bit of an ass, you are an ass.
Yeah.
But then, of course, there's the other bit. It's like, look, it's simple. She had the money, and I didn't. And it's just like, and the thing is,
it draws you back in.
I have made a similar comment before,
right?
To I won't say to who to, but like obviously for obvious,
not libel anyone
for obvious reasons. No, indeed, yeah. But like I have made similar comments in the sense that wealth redistribution. I have no money and you do.
Again, that's why it's a lovable
role. I'm actually talking about our political situation. So.
Okay, good. Before we wrap up on this one, Cam, because it is the special 100th episode. I almost wanted to get a bit of a radio feature in there. And the fact that High Fidelity is based all around this idea of top fives.
Yeah.
Top 5 feels very much like a radio-y podcast thing.
Yeah.
And because this is our 100th episode, we reflect it.
Yes.
I thought it'd be good to back and forth the top 5 films that we've reviewed over the last...
In any
100 episodes.
Any particular order?
I like them in order, yeah. I like them
1
from
being
5
the best.
to 1.
Oh, 5 being...
The worst.
Well, they made the top 5. It can't be that bad.
But, and this isn't necessarily, because I'm sure you could scrape through every episode and find our reviews and ratings. But I'm saying now, looking back, what are the top 5 films? And maybe we could go 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2.
You go first.
I'll open up.
Yeah, you
Number
go first.
5 for me is... Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm slightly saying this to be contrary, but because I know that was that episode was the biggest discrepancy we've ever had. I think I went for a 9, went for a 3.
I love how in our 10 plus years of friendship, that's the biggest
discrepancy. Yeah, the biggest discrepancy is whether Everything Everywhere All at Once is a good film or not. Yeah. I kind of just like saying it, but I genuinely thought it was fantastic. And something that really stuck out to me on that was that it's not a genre I expected to like, but it still absolutely captured me. And the fact that we got a good argument out of it, I thought was fantastic. So number 5 is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I'm going to go with... probably Probably maybe Casablanca, maybe.
Lovely.
Only because it was one of the first movies that, again, all about inroads. Interested in Humphrey Bogart, interested in that style of filmmaking. Made inroads to other things from that. So we'll go with Casablanca for number 5 for me.
Well, that slides quite nicely into mine, number 4, because we had a good run of golden age cinema, and it opened my eyes. Like some of the big films of that era, black and white films, but the script writing in that I thought was fantastic. And it's,
I think I know what you're going to say here.
It's a tricky one because there's quite a few we watched that I loved all of them. But I'm going for the one that took me most by surprise, and that's Roman Holiday.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
And
I was going to say that or 12 Angry Men.
It was a toss-up for me.
Yeah.
And in 12 Angry Men, honourable mention. But the reason I went for Roman Holiday is because I expected it just to be quite playful, brush-off romance from back in the day. But it had depth, and it had meaning, and it was well acted, and it was well shot. But the point that it really reiterated to me was that, wow, films of that era were just very well done. And I think the scripts is what it comes down to. They were quite simple, but they stripped everything away. And also the fact that I realised that final scene was then lifted for Notting Hill. And Notting Hill basically spun it on its head and made it like an optimistic uplifting, whereas Roman Holiday went, no, we're going to write the script and we're going to make it as it is. Yeah. And that final scene where there's the royalty and he goes up and asks the question, but it ends there. It's beautiful, it's magic, and that's everything that film should be. So yeah, Roman Holiday, number 4.
That's fair, yeah. Bloody hell. Maybe.
It's
a toss-up.
Parasite.
Number 4.
Oscar winner.
No, not Parasite. Changed my mind. Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah. Perks of Being a Wallflower. Love that movie. Again, homage to record culture.
Yeah.
You know.
You could maybe draw a line between High Fidelity and
absolutely.
Perks.
So homage to record culture. Again, another homage to about things mattering just a little bit more. Like, the fact that it's got Paul Rudd in it.
It's got Paul Rudd in, so immediately it's in the conversation.
He matters a lot, that lovely man. But there's that scene, that he's giving Charlie his favourite books. And it's, Great Gatsby, it's Kill a Mockingbird, On the Road.
As a teacher.
It's not, it's nothing to do with being a teacher.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with that.
Sorry to typecast you.
No, it's fine. No, I mean, initially I thought it would have been. I thought about it myself, but actually it takes me back to... What was I talking about? It doesn't take me back to anywhere.
Come on, you got this.
It's just a movie it's a good hangover movie.
I think it's a lot more than that.
It makes you feel very, very nice inside.
Yeah, I get you.
And it harkens back to a time when things, when people are passionate about things. There you go.
Lovely.
Let me make of that of what you will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Captain
Fantastic.
That's a great movie. That's really
good. And that's one we reviewed quite a while ago.
Yes.
So it's been quite a long time since I watched it, but I always remember when people say to me, are there any films that you've watched and reviewed for the podcast that really stand out to you?
Yeah.
That comes to mind. I thought it was so powerful. It tapped into a lot of what we like discussing of American anti-consumerism, exploring society, capitalism films. It had all of that element to it, but I thought that the premise of it was really good, but it was executed in a really emotional way, like this idea of a man raising his family just like in the middle of nowhere for years and living this alternative lifestyle, but then has to re-enter it because he's got this conflict of his wife's parents. Totally the opposite of that. His wife dies and they're kind of like battling that. But how those two things come together and how they frame it in a way of the starkness between those two worlds. I think it was just unbelievably well done. And again, one that's just stuck in my head as I thought it was a fantastic film. Callum, number 3.
I'm going to go with a documentary. And I think you know which one.
Okay, I think I might know.
Roadrunner.
Roadrunner.
Roadrunner. That was terrible. God, can we edit that out? Roadrunner. The film about Anthony Bourdain. I mean, anyone that knows me I'm a big Anthony Bourdain fan, and I think it's a documentary that sort of delves into his life in a way that a documentary should and can do. I know that sounds like very sort of obvious, but some documentaries just are a bit weak, aren't they? You know what I mean? Whereas this one, I think it helped by the fact that he'd killed himself. But I also think it's a homage to, not a homage to male suicide. That's not what I want to say. It's a homage.
Not called for that.
No, but it's a homage to getting people to care, I think, about that. That's what I meant. That's what I mean. And I think I cried when I watched it. So I need to bring this back.
Bring it back. You've got it.
It's really funny.
Great documentary. It's a great documentary.
It's just, it's what you have for drinking in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to my head.
Beautiful.
It's a film. I think. Well, not I think. You know what? Let's just leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that.
Roadrunner is my number 3.
Number 2. My number 2 is Colder, and
I forgot we reviewed that.
Colder, the film that has brought me the most tears that we've reviewed and watched for this podcast. And that it was beautiful, it was so delicately done, but that scene when she then sings at her audition and she sings the Joni Mitchell song and her parents are at the back, just bawling. If a film can bring that to you, then I think, wow. And yeah, it won the Oscar, going for a choice of an Oscar winner, absolutely. But I think it was well deserving of it. And it just, if a film can push you to that emotion, genuine, raw emotion, it would check a box for me. And I think it was fantastic. I love that film. Number 2, Callum.
Number 2. It was a toss-up between several things. But I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I know it's a Christmas movie, and I only ever watch it at Christmas, but it's a film about just being grateful.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this has been a theme of this afternoon in the last few episodes that we've done. This idea that there's just a lot of nonsense about at the moment.
There's a lot of nonsense.
You know what I mean? Just absolute nonsense. Society is becoming increasingly more individualistic. And what It's a Wonderful Life tells us is that to be individualistic is not a good thing. And I think the reason why that film is particularly important is because it's set at a time and filmed at a time just before the whole neoliberal project has really sort of taken a hold of America or taken hold of the world. It's pre-1980s. It's the sense of sort of like, was it 47 or 48 that it was filmed? I can't remember now.
Around that.
Definitely in the 40s, wasn't it?
46.
So it's just like, post-World War II optimism in the sense that, like, look at what individualism and selfishness has done to the world. And it's like, let's make a film about how, an evil capitalist dictator isn't a good thing for society. And of course, another reason why I like it as well was because it was made at the same time when you had that sort of post-war McCarthyism, the post-war communist scare, that anyone in Hollywood that dare even critique structures of power was seen as a communist.
Yes.
And I think it's a product of its time, but at the same time, it feels more important and more potent than it's ever been in the society in which we live. There you go. That was much more eloquent than
That's beautiful, Callum. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
and I agree that It's a Wonderful Life is a truly wonderful film.
It's a triumph.
It is a triumph. It is a triumph. Roll on Christmas.
Good old George.
We need to watch it in the cinema this year. We need to watch it in the cinema this year.
George Bailey is my hero.
There you go. Lovely. I wish I had $1 million. Number 1.
Number one.
My number one is Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right,
You've already had it in your top 5.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd save my full piece on it. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying on it, but it's transcendent. It's beautiful. The line.
Do you feel infinite?
I feel infinite. It's just touched me on so many levels. The idea of being a wallflower, someone slightly separate from society, different feelings, these people coming together. But that is an angsty teenage film. It absolutely is a coming of age in the truest sense of it. But it's got so many more elements. But every time I watch that film, the tragedy and drama that it throws at the end gets me every time. And going back to Colder, my second one, I think that just shows a film that can really, really get you with raw emotion. I will put up there because I think that's a really tricky thing to do, but genuine raw emotion. And Perks does that so well. It's beautiful to see. It's got, as you said, that slight through line to High Fidelity in the way that it's got the cult like quirkiness. So here's a thing, here's a bit of that time. He's got his cassettes, he's got all that. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Perks of Being a Wallflower, my favourite that we've reviewed. Callum, what is your number one film that we have reviewed over those 100 episodes?
I mean, so when I was thinking of number one, I was like, okay, what's the criteria in the true spirit of High Fidelity?
Yes, yeah,
it's like, for the club or for the home.
Yeah,
you gotta
be clear on
these
things.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not gonna crack out Ryan Adams' Acoustic Alive at Carnegie Hall when, you're in a nightclub. I mean, I wish I could, but it'd bring everyone's mood. It would calm everyone down a little bit.
Depends what's happened.
True, yeah. But so there was a lot of criteria being. I was dancing around quite a lot of criteria as to what movie I would choose. I thought about going sort of populist. We've reviewed quite a lot of populist movies.
Yeah.
So I thought about going, all out. What is your, popcorn movie, pure entertainment, funny, great soundtrack. I nearly went for Top Gun.
I was going to say, if you go for Top Gun now, I'm going to kick off.
I nearly went for Top Gun.
I didn't like where that was going.
But I didn't.
Okay, we don't have to have that discussion / argument.
I didn't because Top Gun's Maverick is a great movie in its own context. Like all top fives. All top fives are great in their own context.
Yeah, exactly.
So good dragging this out.
You've got me on tenterhooks.
That was great. But then I thought, well, actually, maybe a top five is really about just how it makes you feel. Maybe on a deeper level. Because then I was thinking all the other ones that I've said are my top five, they've all got some sort of wider meaning about, life and ideas.
Yeah.
I can tell you really want me to say
I do.
one.
I'm on edge.
even the people, the person operating the camera is just like, please, God, get on with it. I went for Past Lives.
Past Lives, yeah. That was great.
Came out a couple of years ago. Was it a couple of years ago or last year? It was last year. Came out last year. And the reason why is because it's all about, it's like every academic's profile, isn't it? It explores the intersectionality between past and present and the future. And it does. It's exactly what it does. It's all about nostalgia. It's about the idea of a relationship when you're at completely different points in your life. And it's just so blimmin' good. It's about perception, mental health. It is about mental health, actually. I think it is about mental health. It's about who you are in the context of massive change in your life, whether that be from a relationship perspective or from a career perspective. I just think it's quite an important film to watch.
Good. And an important film should make it to number one.
I dragged that out.
And there we have it.
So much.
There are individual top 5 films that we've watched whilst we've reviewed all of these episodes. And I just wanted to take this opportunity, Cam, before we wrap this episode up. It's been an absolute joy to review all these films with you.
Thank you very much.
I can't wait to dive in for the rest of them. But we made it here. Yeah. Here we are, sat in a wonderful pub,
I mean, you can
having
tell,
a chat
you can tell
with
it's
our microphones,
absolutely
branded
Yeah.
microphones.
You can tell it's going winter time though, because when we arrived in here, it was daylight.
Yeah, it was. That's how long we've been going now.
Yeah.
But it's been beautiful. And what better thing to do? Sat down with a pint and talk about films. And it's brought us so many great conversations outside of the pub, inside of the pub, on mic, off mic. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more to come and bring on more films. And that's the joy. They keep making them, so we'll keep reviewing them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
Yep.
And I think High Fidelity was the perfect way to wrap up this
I agree.
100th episode.
I agree. Yeah, it's ended with a nice theme. I think top 5. I can't remember what I was going to say now.
There we go. What a wonderful way to end the podcast. There's nothing else to be said. That's the point. There's nothing else to be said.
I'd mic drop, but they're quite expensive, so I'm not going to.
But there we have it. 100 episodes in. That was High Fidelity. You also got the bonus there of our top 5 films, and hopefully we'll be back in 100 episode time to give the top 5 of the next 100. We've got a long way to go to there, but of course we'll have plenty more episodes. We'll have conversation episodes. We'll be getting out there. We're going to film festivals. We're speaking to people. We're on the internet. We're off the internet. We're everywhere. We're talking about films. We love it. 100 episodes strong, and we keep going. Of course, as always, check us out on Instagram if you don't always. Also, follow us at the Glacé Film Club. We're on there sharing our thoughts, feelings, photos of Callum, different pictures of cinemas across the world. We've got all of that. And please, if you're feeling kind, generous and lovely, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would be
please
very grateful.
Definitely do that.
So then we'll keep doing this,
absolutely.
going to pubs, drinking pints and chatting about films.
It's good for the validation.
It's good for the validation. But that's that. Until next time, that was another episode of the Glacé Film Club podcast. We'll see you all later. Hey.